Whispers travel faster than royal announcements. 5 minutes before the palace's daily press briefing, a murmur swept through the marble corridors like a draft no one could trace. A young staffer, still clutching the morning papers, froze at the sight that would soon ignite a quiet storm across Buckingham Palace. Duchess Sophie of Edinburgh, walking briskly, her hands wrapped tightly around a small stack of documents stamped with the royal insignia. At first, it looked ordinary, another set of files shuttled through the endless machinery of the monarchy. But one name scrawled across the top in neat, deliberate handwriting stopped him cold. Catherine, and just beneath it, a word no one expected to see again: maternity. The sight lasted only seconds, but in the royal world, seconds can turn into scandal. The staffer's breath caught, his pulse quickened, and instinct told him to look away, but curiosity betrayed him. Sophie's face was calm yet strained, her steps purposeful, almost defensive. It wasn't the walk of a duchess performing duty, it was the stride of someone carrying something she shouldn't. Within moments, she vanished behind a restricted wing door, leaving behind nothing but echoes and questions that would soon reach every level of the palace. Inside the royal offices, a subtle panic began to brew. Aides exchanged glances without words. The palace, an institution built on silence and precision, suddenly felt tense and alive with uncertainty. In whispered tones, the word maternity began to circle like smoke, dangerous, untraceable, impossible to contain. Within minutes, attempts to silence it began. Internal chats were purged. Conversations were halted mid-sentence. One senior aide reportedly leaned over a desk and muttered, "You didn't see that. You didn't hear that." Understood? But containment in the palace is a fragile illusion. Every attempt to bury the story only gave it weight. People began asking why Sophie, known for her quiet loyalty and diplomatic distance, would be in possession of such a file. Why her, and why now? Some assumed it was part of her duties, perhaps routine oversight. Others, those who had served long enough to read the undercurrents, knew better. Sophie's silence was deliberate, her expression unreadable. Behind the gilded doors, whispers turned to speculation. Some said Catherine had been under medical observation for weeks, hidden under layers of official secrecy. Others suggested the file wasn't meant for her eyes at all, that it was recovered rather than delivered. Whatever the truth, the tension was undeniable. Even the palace press office, normally mechanical in its rhythm, hesitated to proceed with its usual release. Something had shifted. In a monarchy that thrives on perfect appearances, even the faintest hint of the unexpected becomes dangerous. And this wasn't just any whisper, it was the kind that carried consequence. The corridors, once symbols of control and dignity, now buzzed with a secret no one dared to name, a secret that, if true, could alter the delicate equilibrium of the royal household. Sophie's quiet composure only deepened the mystery. She avoided eye contact, offered polite smiles, and moved through her schedule without a tremor of visible guilt. But those who saw her that morning knew something was off. Her usual calm carried a weight as if she had stepped into a storm that hadn't yet broken. And as the palace braced for another day of routine statements and ceremonial smiles, an unspoken dread lingered among the staff. Because in the royal world, no document travels without purpose, and no duchess moves without reason. The moment Sophie's hands touched that file, something irreversible began. What looked like an innocent oversight could, in truth, be the spark that exposes the monarchy's most carefully guarded secret. But what if Sophie's discovery wasn't a mistake, but the first crack in a secret the monarchy has been guarding for months? 2 days before the mysterious files appeared, Duchess Sophie's movements slipped beneath the palace's radar, something almost impossible for a royal of her standing. On the surface, it seemed routine, a quiet visit to a restricted medical wing, listed officially as an inspection. Yet even in the most disciplined royal schedules, certain visits leave trails that can't be erased. Witnesses later recalled how the Duchess's demeanour that day was unusually measured, her voice low, her presence commanding yet secretive. She had entered with confidence, escorted by no attendants, no aides, no fanfare. But hours later, whispers began to swirl because she had not gone in alone. Security logs, carefully time-stamped, revealed an anomaly. Alongside her name appeared another, one that palace administrators later attempted to remove from internal records. An unidentified consultant, authorized only moments before Sophie arrived. Those who caught a glimpse described him as older, discreet, and clearly uncomfortable under the palace's unblinking scrutiny. They spoke briefly, behind closed doors, away from the usual medical team. Some said the exchange lasted no more than 15 minutes. Others swore it stretched to nearly an hour. No records exist of what was discussed, yet one nurse later admitted she overheard 2 words that made her skin prickle: urgent health. The palace, known for controlling narratives with surgical precision, immediately issued a statement describing Sophie's visit as part of her ongoing support for royal healthcare initiatives. It sounded plausible enough, but the story fractured under quiet questioning. Why was the Duchess personally overseeing medical operations that didn't fall under her portfolio? Why was her visit unannounced? And why was she escorted out a back entrance rather than the public corridor used for official inspections? Even seasoned staff could sense it. Something was being concealed under layers of polite phrasing and practiced smiles. The tension deepened when rumors spread that a single folder had changed hands during that meeting, one embossed with the royal crest and sealed under confidentiality protocols. Several staff members later claimed to have caught a glimpse of it. Across the cover, written neatly but unmistakably, were the initials CMW, Catherine Middleton Windsor. It was an impossible coincidence, one that no one dared question aloud. Yet curiosity breeds courage, and by the next day, the whispers were no longer whispers. They were questions disguised as gossip, spreading from staff quarters to press rooms. Theories multiplied. Some believed Sophie had been sent by William himself, unwilling to expose Catherine to the frenzy that would follow any hint of medical news. Others thought Sophie acted on her own as a loyal sister-in-law, trying to shield the princess from political vultures circling the palace. Yet there was also a darker notion, murmured only in corners, that Sophie was not protecting Catherine, but uncovering something the family wanted buried. Her face that afternoon, pale but composed, hinted at discovery rather than duty. Even within royal circles, the lines between loyalty and secrecy are blurred. Those who saw Sophie after the visit noticed how she avoided eye contact with senior aides, as though she feared her thoughts might betray her. Later that evening, her private car bypassed the usual exit, heading not toward home, but to a private estate where certain conversations are held beyond the reach of press or protocol. By the time the maternity files surfaced 48 hours later, the palace had already tightened its grip on communication channels. Yet one question lingered in every whispered exchange. Why was Sophie, and not William, the one holding those documents? And why did her name appear beside Catherine's in the visitor registry for the medical wing? If Sophie was acting on someone's behalf, then the question becomes, who authorized her to touch what only royal doctors see? Weeks before Sophie's quiet discovery sent shockwaves through the palace, something else had already begun to unsettle royal watchers: the sudden and unexplained absence of the Princess of Wales. At first, it was brushed off as routine. Personal rest, the palace called it, a vague statement wrapped in polite detachment. But for those who had come to recognize Catherine's rhythm, her appearances, her commitments, her unspoken consistency, the silence was deafening. Her public calendar, once a tapestry of engagements and charitable visits, had been stripped bare overnight. Events were cancelled without explanation. Staff, usually briefed with precision, found themselves staring at blank schedules and unanswered calls. Even her social presence, carefully curated and always measured, froze without warning. No words, no images, no trace of the woman the world had grown used to seeing smile through pressure. Inside the palace, unease began to build. Catherine was not one to withdraw lightly, not one to vanish without ensuring the show went on. The excuses sounded rehearsed, the tone mechanical. "She's taking time," aides said, but none could explain why her private secretary appeared distraught, or why senior attendants whispered about medical appointments shrouded in secrecy. One insider confided that Catherine's absence was more than fatigue. It was avoidance. Avoidance of questions she wasn't ready to answer, of appearances she couldn't sustain, of something happening beyond the polished royal curtain. Then came the whispers about tests. Quiet mentions of routine checkups, followed by the ominous repetition of a phrase few dared say aloud: morning sickness. It was dismissed publicly, yet privately, staff admitted that the timing and secrecy mirrored patterns from years prior, when Catherine's health had forced sudden retreat. Only, this time, there was no statement of pregnancy, no photographs to assure the public, no carefully worded reassurance from the palace. Instead, there was stillness, and intentional, suffocating stillness. A leaked internal calendar deepened the mystery. Engagements that had been confirmed just days earlier, a charity visit, an art exhibition, a foreign trip, all disappeared. Aides deleted references to them, replacing scheduled entries with coded abbreviations. Reporters noticed inconsistencies in official communication. One journalist described the silence as strategic, not accidental, suggesting that something was being coordinated behind closed doors. And yet, beyond the procedural concealment, there was something painfully human about Catherine's withdrawal. Friends close to her hinted at emotional exhaustion, a woman cornered between personal vulnerability and public duty. Behind her graceful exterior was someone bound by royal expectations, where every absence is an announcement, and every silence becomes a storm. To retreat, even for health, meant inviting speculation. To stay visible meant enduring relentless scrutiny. The palace's carefully constructed facade was trembling under that impossible balance. Still, there were small, almost imperceptible signs that Catherine was not simply resting. Private drivers spotted travelling routes to discreet clinics, visitors recorded arriving at side entrances, and one message allegedly circulated among her inner circle: "It's under control. Just keep quiet." That single sentence carried both comfort and fear. Control meant secrecy, and secrecy meant something worth hiding. When the public finally began to move on, accepting her absence as another royal pause, the quiet unease started to fade. Until Sophie's sudden appearance with those maternity files shattered the calm. The whispers roared back to life, stronger, sharper, and more invasive than ever, because now, Catherine's disappearance no longer looked like rest, it looked like protection. And just when the whispers were fading, Sophie's quiet act reignited the flame, suggesting Catherine's absence was not rest, but protection. Behind the calm facade of a future king lies a man wrestling with secrets. At first glance, Prince William appeared composed, smiling dutifully beside dignitaries and waving at cheering crowds. But those who have studied him closely, experts, insiders, even palace staff, saw something deeper in the cracks of that composure. His smile no longer reached his eyes. His hand, once steady, now lingered nervously at his cuff. During speeches, his tone trembled ever so slightly, as though he were forcing himself to sound collected while his mind drifted elsewhere. And when Catherine's absence became too strong to ignore, his carefully built calm began to unravel, one uneasy glance at a time. Body language experts, analyzing his recent appearances, noted the shift instantly. The tightened jaw, the restless fingers, the way he avoided questions about family matters with a quick, practiced laugh. The man who had always mastered stoic restraint suddenly looked like someone carrying a secret too heavy to bear in public. He was smiling through something he couldn't say, and that silence, that unspoken struggle, began to speak louder than any royal statement ever could. Behind closed doors, whispers among advisors told another story. William, they said, had become unpredictable, sharp in tone, withdrawn in meetings, and increasingly resistant to press guidance. Sources hinted at tense exchanges with senior aides about what the public should be told, and when. He wanted control, but control was slipping. The palace communication team allegedly urged him to issue a simple message of reassurance regarding Catherine's well-being. William refused. He insisted on waiting, arguing that it's not the right time. But the longer he waited, the more suspicion grew. Some called it an image, crisis. Others said it was a crisis of trust. Even among families, the divide was visible. Sophie, once seen merely as a quiet supporter, had become his silent anchor. The two were seen conferring privately at engagements, their faces serious, voices low. Those who witnessed it said Sophie had taken on the role of confidant, the only person William seemed to confide in without fear of judgment. But even that raised eyebrows. Why her, and why now? When questioned about his wife's condition, William's answers grew shorter, his eyes darting downward as though avoiding something. One courtier later remarked, "He's not ready for another storm, not after everything." It was a revealing comment, one that hinted not just at fear for Catherine, but at dread of what public discovery might unleash. Each passing day added new pressure. Advisors wanted statements, the press demanded visibility, and even senior royals pressed for clarity. William stood in the middle of it all, torn between protecting his family and preserving the monarchy's fragile balance. The weight of legacy pressed on his shoulders, the crown he was born to inherit now felt more like a chain. Every smile, every handshake, every carefully staged appearance was a test of endurance. Behind the polite nods and camera flashes, there was exhaustion, not just physical, but emotional, the kind born from guarding truths too volatile to reveal. And perhaps the greatest irony of all was that his silence, meant to protect, only made the whispers louder. The palace's refusal to comment became its own confession, fueling a narrative William could no longer control. His public composure became the mask of a man haunted by what might come next, not just for him, but for the woman at the heart of it all. If William's fear was about more than image, then the truth might reach beyond the royal family's private walls. Inside those brown folders, sealed under the label Private Royal Records, lay the kind of documents that were never meant to see daylight, not by staff, not by advisors, and certainly not by another member of the royal family. Yet somehow, Duchess Sophie had them in her hands. According to one insider, the moment she opened the folder, the air in the room seemed to shift. Her expression, usually calm and poised, drained of colour, because it wasn't just Catherine's name written across those pages. There was another. The contents of those files have never been officially confirmed, but whispers from those close to the palace claim they contained far more than medical details. One section allegedly carried the heading Royal Family Continuity Confidential, paired with another stamped medical authorization. To those who understand the inner workings of the monarchy, that combination of terms meant one thing: succession planning. It suggested that whatever was inside the file wasn't simply about Catherine's health, but something that could influence the future of the monarchy itself. Sophie, insiders say, paled as she scanned the contents. Her hands trembled slightly, and within moments, she shut the folder as though she had touched fire. The name that appeared alongside Catherine's, an unnamed figure referenced only by initials, has never been publicly identified. Some suggest it belonged to a medical liaison, others hint at a royal-linked surrogate program quietly considered for emergencies. But the more one speculated, the more the palace tightened its walls, ensuring that no one, not even senior aides, could confirm a single detail. Within hours, the order went out. The documents were to be returned immediately and logged under restricted access. Yet, the damage was already done. The sight of those files in Sophie's possession had unleashed something the palace feared most. Rumours spread among staff that the documents had been part of a contingency protocol, possibly drafted during Catherine's earlier pregnancies, but updated recently in secrecy. The references to royal family continuity raised particular alarm. That phrase, one senior aide admitted, is rarely used outside discussions of succession or lineage. Then came the attempts to contain it. Palace officials demanded all paper copies be sealed and electronic records locked under special clearance. But it was too late. Several had already seen enough to know this was no ordinary health matter. Sophie herself withdrew from public view for nearly a day, cancelling minor engagements without explanation. Those who saw her said she appeared shaken, quieter than usual, as though replaying something she wished she could unsee. By the next morning, whispers had turned to speculation. Could the files point to a planned announcement? A medical development with constitutional implications? Or was there a truth so delicate that it could fracture the monarchy's image if revealed? The palace refused to comment, choosing silence as its shield. Yet silence, in the royal world, often speaks louder than any denial. What no one could ignore was that something within those sealed pages had rattled even the calmest of royals. The question wasn't just what Sophie had seen, but why she, of all people, had been allowed to see it, and more importantly, who had placed those files where she could find them. Because in the monarchy, nothing happens by chance. Every move is orchestrated, every leak calculated, and if those documents were never meant for Sophie's eyes, then perhaps someone wanted her to find them, someone with their own plan, their own warning, or their own power to wield. And yet, before anyone could contain the whispers, someone else had already made a call, and that call would change everything. Within hours of Sophie's unexpected visit to the restricted wing, a single phone call shattered the illusion of calm that the palace had tried so hard to maintain. It was short, barely a minute long, but its trace would lead to one of both the most alarming discoveries in recent royal memory. The call came from the desk of a royal communications officer, a seasoned professional known for their discretion. But what made this call extraordinary wasn't just where it came from, it was where it went. The number on the other end didn't belong to any government department, press outlet, or internal contact. It was registered to a private medical foundation named Catherine Middleton. For those inside the palace who later examined the logs, it was a revelation that could not be explained away as coincidence. The foundation, believed to have been quietly established years ago to handle certain personal medical and philanthropic matters, had long been dormant. His reactivation and call time was enough to send shivers through the royal communication chain. Why now? Why, just hours after Sophie was seen holding those maternity files, was someone from inside the palace reaching out to a foundation connected to Catherine's private identity? It was as if the walls of the monarchy had cracked open, revealing a line of contact deliberately hidden from royal oversight. By the next morning, the communications officer making the call was gone. No announcement, no transfer. Simply gone. Their desk cleared overnight, email credentials revoked, and their name quietly erased from the internal directory. Staff whispered that they had been escorted out before dawn, though no one saw it happen. The palace offered no comment, only a cold statement about administrative restructuring. Yet everyone knew no one simply disappears from royal service without reason. The real shock came when a senior aide admitted hearing fragments of the call through an open line. What they claimed to have heard made the room fall silent. A woman's voice, soft but unmistakable, answering briefly before the line disconnected. "I can't talk now. Not here." Those were the words allegedly spoken. And while no official confirmation followed, those who had heard the recording swore it sounded like Catherine herself. The emotional weight of that possibility hung over the staff like fog. Catherine, isolated, hidden, possibly communicating from a private facility under her maiden name. If true, it meant that the princess had deliberately stepped outside the royal system to shield herself or someone else from its reach. Almost immediately after the incident, the palace's press team went into overdrive. They crafted a polished narrative. Catherine, they said, had undergone a routine health check. A perfectly normal, perfectly boring explanation meant to snuff out speculation before it spread. But their mistake was underestimating the speed of curiosity. Once the call log was leaked to a journalist specializing in royal affairs, the phrase private foundation became the focus of fevered discussion online. What was it for? Why did it exist? And why, if all was well, did a royal staffer vanish after making contact with it? As the media's interest grew, the palace tightened its control. Statements were coordinated, leaks silenced, and trusted reporters offered alternative stories in exchange for compliance. But covering up a story this complex was like trying to hold back the tide. For every denial issued, another whisper emerged. For every rumor suppressed, another question surfaced. Because no matter how well the palace tried to bury the truth, the timing was too precise, the details too aligned. Sophie's secret discovery, Catherine's absence, And now this mysterious call formed a chain too deliberate to ignore. Someone was orchestrating something behind the scenes, and the palace's frantic denials only confirmed it. And as officials scrambled to control the narrative, one chilling realization began to take root among the staff. If Catherine truly was in private medical care, then it wasn't just her well-being the palace was protecting. It was something, or someone, connected to her that the world wasn't meant to know about. But as the press release tried to bury the story, the truth was already finding its way to the public through another channel. At exactly 6:47 a.m., the world woke to a headline that shattered the royal illusion of calm. Secret pregnancy at the palace? The words blazed across a tabloid homepage, bold and merciless. Within minutes, the article vanished, pulled down as swiftly as it appeared, but it was too late. Screenshots had already spread across the internet, igniting a global storm that no palace wall could contain. For millions of readers, it wasn't just another rumor. It was the revelation they had been waiting for, the answer to Catherine's mysterious silence, to Sophie's secretive visit, to William's unease. What began as a single line of text spiraled into an inferno. News anchors speculated live on air, social media exploded with theories, and hashtags questioning the palace's integrity trended worldwide. The public's reactions ranged from sympathy to suspicion, awe to outrage. Within hours, what should have been a private family matter became an international obsession. Everyone wanted answers. Was the princess expecting again, or was the story more complicated than anyone dared to admit? Inside Buckingham Palace, chaos reigned. Phones rang non-stop. Advisors clashed behind closed doors. Emergency meetings were called before dawn. The mood inside the communications wing described by one insider as pure panic. Draft statements were written, rewritten, and shredded again. Every version seemed wrong, too emotional, too vague, too defensive. Senior aides argued over tone, while publicists begged for time the monarchy no longer had. The palace's golden rule, never explain, never complain, was cracking under the weight of a digital age, where silence only fuels the fire. And at the center of it all stood Sophie, once the quiet constant of royal diplomacy, now under quiet investigation. Her every move last week was scrutinized. Reports surfaced that she had been the last to handle sensitive documents, and now her name circulated among those asking who could have possibly leaked the story. Some inside the palace defended her, calling her incapable of betrayal. Others weren't so sure. Loyalty, after all, is a fragile thing when secrets this dangerous are at stake. For the first time in years, the royal household was divided. Some members pushed for transparency, arguing that honesty would protect the crown's reputation. Others insisted on silence, fearing that confirming or denying anything would only deepen the wound. William, caught in the center, was described as visibly torn. His trust in those closest to him was slipping, and the strain showed. Even seasoned courtiers whispered that the balance of unity was fracturing under the weight of too many secrets, too many lies. But beneath the chaos, another theory began to take shape, one that chilled even the most loyal aides. What if the leak wasn't accidental at all? What if it had been engineered? Some believed that someone inside the palace wanted the truth to come out, or perhaps wanted to expose how far the monarchy would go to bury it. The story's perfect timing, the precision of its release, and the speed of its deletion all pointed to intent. Someone had struck with purpose, knowing exactly how to set the world ablaze. As the palace scrambled to suppress the narrative, to erase traces of the scandal from every feed and headline, one truth became undeniable: the story was no longer theirs to control. Once the world starts to question a secret, no amount of royal silence can make it disappear. And as the palace raced to silence rumors, another revelation would make denial impossible. Just hours after the palace went into damage control over the leaked headline, a quiet yet extraordinary development unfolded behind closed doors. Sources within the royal network confirmed that an unnamed doctor trusted with some of the monarchy's most sensitive cases had flown into London under discreet security escort. His arrival wasn't publicly logged. His car, escorted by unmarked vehicles, headed not to a royal residence but to a private medical facility long associated with the royal household, and when insiders caught sight of his name, murmurs spread through every corner of the palace. It was the same name listed inside the confidential maternity file Sophie had carried. That single connection changed everything. What had begun as rumor and speculation was now tethered to something tangible, a real person, a traceable action, and a secret that suddenly seemed undeniable. Staff working near the Royal Medical Office reported that, for the first time in weeks, Catherine's personal file was removed from the archive. It wasn't logged through standard procedure, and the request came from a channel marked Special Authorization. Those who caught a glimpse described seeing her initials, alongside a secondary note titled Continuity Protocol, Private Consultation. In a palace obsessed with formality, such off-record adjustments rarely happen by accident. The involvement of this physician, known for his history of absolute discretion, only deepened the mystery. He had been called upon during past royal pregnancies, but this time his presence was shrouded in unusual secrecy. Sources close to him claimed he received instructions directly from someone within Catherine's inner circle, not from the palace's official medical board. That distinction mattered. It meant Catherine's situation was being handled privately, perhaps even against the wishes of higher royal authority. And the more details surfaced, the clearer it became that this was not merely a health matter, it was a controlled operation to manage something potentially explosive. Behind the polished facade of royal protocol, a quiet panic was taking shape. Some insiders began whispering about a pregnancy deliberately kept off the books, not hidden out of shame, but protected from interference. The fear, they said, was twofold: the relentless brutality of the press and the deeper political implications of another heir entering the line of succession. The palace has always treated lineage as a matter of state, not emotion. Every new birth reshapes the future, recalibrates the hierarchy, and shifts public attention. In this case, the stakes were even higher, for this pregnancy, if confirmed, carried with it questions of timing, legitimacy, and power. Those close to Sophie revealed that she had not acted out of defiance, but desperation. Her actions, once viewed as reckless, now looked like the efforts of someone trying to protect Catherine from a storm that had already begun to break. It was said that Sophie and the doctor had been in contact for weeks, orchestrating quiet consultations under layers of coded scheduling. Her demeanor after reading the files suddenly made sense. She hadn't merely stumbled upon a secret, she had been guarding it. And so, the narrative shifted again. What had started as whispers of scandal was transforming into something much more profound, a story of protection, loyalty, and a monarchy struggling to contain what could redefine its legacy. The pieces were falling into place, but the final confirmation would come from someone no one expected. As cameras swarmed the gates of Kensington Palace, the air outside seemed thick with anticipation. Reporters whispered, cameras clicked, and the nation held its breath. But what came next, no one could have predicted. A lone staffer, pale and trembling, stepped into the courtyard not to defend the palace, but to speak against its silence. His voice quivered as he uttered the words that would ripple across the world. I saw the file. I know why Sophie had it. Catherine is expecting, and it's not supposed to go public yet. In that instant, everything changed. The veil of secrecy that had cloaked the monarchy began to tear. For the first time, the truth had a human voice. It was a confession born not from rebellion, but from compassion. The young staffer, visibly shaken, described sleepless nights and a conscience too heavy to carry. He had seen the tension in Sophie's eyes, the guarded messages exchanged between the Duchess and senior aides, and the extraordinary precautions taken to shield Catherine's private reality. What he revealed wasn't scandal, it was sacrifice. The secrecy, he said, wasn't about deception, it was about protection. Catherine's health had become fragile, and the family's decision to keep her condition hidden was an act of love, not manipulation. The palace wasn't conspiring against the people, it was trying to shield a woman from the weight of the crown while she healed. As his words echoed through the courtyard, a rare stillness settled over the frenzy. Reporters, used to chasing scandal, found themselves confronting something far more human. Sophie's actions, once branded suspicious, now appeared heroic. The staffer's account painted her not as a manipulator, but as a guardian, the one who stepped into the storm so Catherine wouldn't have to. She had carried the files not to leak them, but to ensure that the truth remained controlled, that it wouldn't reach the world before Catherine was ready. Every cautious glance, every hushed word, every sleepless night had been in service of something profoundly personal. But with truth comes consequence. The revelation unleashed a fresh wave of emotion within the royal family. William, sources said, was both relieved and furious. Relieved that the truth was finally surfacing, but furious that it had escaped their hands. The palace scrambled to regain composure, issuing statements that danced around the edges of confirmation without ever fully admitting it. Yet, no amount of polished wording could undo the impact of the confession. The public's sympathy shifted overnight. Instead of outrage, there was understanding. Instead of judgment, compassion. People began to see Catherine not as an untouchable figurehead, but as a woman exhausted, vulnerable, and in need of peace. Behind the scenes, the royal household tried to restore unity. Meetings were held, hands shaken, voices lowered. The family, fractured by secrecy, began to close ranks again, aware that this moment could either destroy or redefine them. In a rare show of alignment, even the Queen's advisors agreed that the truth had to be managed delicately, not denied, but directed. As the palace readied its next public move, a senior aide hinted that an announcement of something special was forthcoming. It was neither a denial nor a confirmation, but it was enough to spark renewed speculation that the monarchy, at last, was preparing to face the truth head-on. Still, beyond the statements and headlines, one question refused to fade. If the staffer's confession was real, if Catherine truly was expecting, how long had the palace known? How long had they hidden the secret from the very people who had stood by them for decades? The monarchy, so used to mastering silence, now faced a noise it couldn't escape the sound of the world demanding answers. And as the world waits, one question burns through every headline if this is true. How long has the palace really been hiding it? When silence grows this loud, the truth can no longer stay behind palace walls.